First modern Britons had dark to black skin, Cheddar Man DNA analysis reveals. The genome of Cheddar Man, who lived 10,000 years ago, suggests that he had blue eyes, dark skin, and dark curly hair. A forensic reconstruction of Cheddar Man's head, based on the new DNA evidence and his fossile skeleton. Photograph, Channel 4. The first modern Britons, who lived about 10,000 years ago, had dark to black skin, a groundbreaking DNA analysis of Britain's oldest complete skeleton has revealed. The fossil, known as Cheddar Man, was unearthed more than a century ago in Goff's Cave in Somerset. Intense speculation has built up around Cheddar Man's origins and appearance because he lived shortly after the first settlers crossed from continental Europe to Britain at the end of the last ice age. People of white British ancestry alive today are descendants of this population. People of white British ancestry alive today are descendants of this population. People of white British ancestry alive today are descendants of this population. The data on race were derived from answers to the question on race that was asked of individuals in the United States. The Census Bureau collects racial data in accordance with guidelines provided by the U.S. Office of Management and Budget, OMB, and these data are based on self-identification. The racial...
You can self-identify. Nothing is wrong with that. And the U.S. government, the U.S. Census allows for that. When are you and the rest of the people who are black actors, black rappers, etc., want to start telling people the real truth, black people specifically, the real truth that they're actually not black, that they are white? Failure to do that makes you an accessory to fraud, provided those black people don't become white. The moment they do, you're an accessory to fraud. That's why I am white and indigenous. I am white and autochthonous. I am white and Caucasian. I am white. I am white. I am white.
The second principle put down by Chief Justice Tawney in the Dred Scott decision was that blacks cannot be citizens of the United States. In a sense, Dred Scott can't even sue because he's not an American. This is one of the best examples of this notion of blacks as aliens. Even though he's born here and everything, he is not an American. The American family, as Tawney says, is for white people. And in the most famous sentence in that decision, he says, a black man has no rights which a white man is bound to respect. Now, he's not saying blacks can be killed with impunity. What he's saying is, legally speaking, they are not part of the body politic. They are not part of the we the people that created the Constitution, and therefore they're just outside of the system. So they don't have any rights under the Constitution because the Constitution is for white people.
Before the project started, I was hoping that I could identify or could be able to find evidence that support independent origin of Chinese in China, because I'm a Chinese and came from China, and through the education process, I always believed that there is something special about Chinese.
He singled out a male genetic marker which only appeared about 80,000 years ago in Africa. So any man who carries that marker must have recent African ancestors and can't be descended from the more ancient Asian Homo erectus. Jin took DNA from over 160 ethnic groups around East Asia. Over 12,000 samples. And so, what did you find?
We did not see even one single individual that could be considered as the descendant of the Homo erectus in China. Rather, everybody was a descendant of our ancestors from Africa.
The result couldn't have been any clearer. But how did that make you feel as a Chinese person?
After I saw the evidences that we generate in my laboratory, I think we should all be happy with that, because after all, modern humans from different part of the world are not so different from each other, and we are very close relatives. Rather, everybody was a descendant of our ancestors from Africa.
There are a lot of zebrafish in my laboratory because I'm a geneticist and I study how mutations occur, which is how cancer occurs. And I use pigmentation to detect those mutations. By chance, the light skin-colored fish that I used for that research also taught us a lot about how Europeans, how humans became lighter skinned.
What Professor Chang discovered was perhaps one of the most important genetic mutations ever found. A single change among literally billions of coded instructions within zebrafish DNA that reduced black pigment from their stripes. Soon after, this identical genetic mutation was found in fair-skinned Europeans.
There was a magic moment in this research. When I got back the results that showed that the number and the size and the amount of pigment in light-skinned zebrafish were all diminished, and the same thing happened in humans. When I opened the textbook and saw that same thing, I began to sweat. Not only did light-skinned people evolve from black-skinned people, but lighter-skinned people, whether they're European or whether they're Asian, like me, were actually mutants of the dark-skinned people.
This was remarkable because we had only inferred on the basis of circumstantial evidence that this must have occurred in evolution, but we didn't have any concrete genetic evidence. Now we do.
People of white British ancestry alive today are descendants of this population.
Rather, everybody was a descendant of our ancestors from Africa.
Lighter-skinned people, whether they're European or whether they're Asian, like me, were actually mutants of the dark-skinned people.
Lepers alive today that self-identify as white are descendants of dark to black-skinned people. Yet lepers self-identify as white, and call people with dark skin black, knowing lepers themselves are mutations of the original darker hue white original sun people. White. A person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa.
Truth, right? Persons of African descent cannot be, nor were ever intended to be citizens under the United States Constitution. Plaintiff is without standing to file a suit. Black has no standing at law. They have no standing to even file a suit, right? Supreme Court of the United States argued February 11th to the 14th, 1856. Re-argued December 15th to the 18th, 1856. Decided March 6, 1857. The Dred Scott versus John F.A. Sanford. This case has never been overruled. This stands as law. This is perfect. Here's the definition, etymology of obvious. Obvious, frequently met with. From Latin, obvious, that is in the way, presenting itself readily, open, exposed. Commonplace, from obvivium, adverb, in the way. From ob, in front of, against, see ob. Vium, accusative of via, way, see via, meaning plain to see, evident, is first recorded 1630s, related to obviously, obviousness. So obvious, something repeatedly, it's occurring, it's plain to see, it's evident, it's frequently happening.